For generations, St. John's has united us with its uplifting vision and lives it has touched. There are thousands of stories about St. John's. Prayers answered for a long-awaited adoption, pain-free relief after healing from injury, settling into a new home for the next phase of life, the comfort of compassionate end-of-life care, the joy that comes from volunteering, and at-home help that supports the fullest life. At St. John's, we are creating community and bringing families together. We offer many services for home, health, and family, from childcare, support for an unplanned pregnancy, and physical therapy, to home health care, senior living services, and hospice care. For all times of life, we are here for you. The heartwarming stories of St. John's are woven into the fabric of our community. What's your St. John's story?
Hello, and welcome to another segment of What's Your St. John's Story. It is a portion of this Community 7 television where we connect St. John's and the stories behind St. John's to find out more about and connect our community. My name is Heather Estus, and I'm with the foundation, and today we are celebrating Volunteer Appreciation. And with us today we have Ying Custer, who has been volunteering with St. John's for how long, Ying?
Oh my gosh, for almost 2 years, I think.
Okay, 2 years. And tell us, well, first of all, we did have a little bit of a pre-conversation about your history in Billings.
Yes.
Ying is how many years young?
Okay, I'm 88 years old. I'll be 89 in September.
You wouldn't have guessed it from your...
I know. Because, yeah, you know what? I don't act my age.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's what I tell everybody. They don't believe how old I am. And I said, that's because I don't act my age.
Yeah, you get along pretty well, too. You walk faster than me.
Yes. Yes, if it wasn't for the, if I didn't have to use the walker or a cane and I was just walking normal, yes, I am a very fast walker. I have always been. That's why when I walk with the walker, I walk fast and everybody thinks I'm having a contest racing somebody, but I'm not. But that's just my normal gait.
Yeah. Well, and this month is Volunteer Appreciation Month, and we have an event every year where we honor special volunteers at St. John's. And you were chosen to be honored this year.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about your volunteer experience at St. John's.
Oh, okay. At St. John's, like I said, I just started maybe about 2 years ago, and they needed people to help there at the little country store where they buy, things that people would normally use and don't want to go out to the store just to get one item.
Yeah.
And so it's a little grocery store, and it also has some a few medicinal things like cough drops, cough syrup, and things like that, and some other things that are not actually food.
Yeah.
But so once a week, they order things to come in.
Yeah.
And I go down there and I price them.
And this is the Chapel Court Pantry? Is that what we're talking about?
It's the not Chapel Court. This is one in Mission Ridge.
Oh, in Mission Ridge.
Yeah,
okay.
It's just called the little country store.
Yes, I know exactly where it's at.
It's by the bistro, and
okay.
Yes, and so every Thursday, and we just did it this morning.
Yep.
And I go down and price everything, and believe it or not, I am the only one that's pricing, and sometimes them that are putting things away cannot keep up with me.
Yeah.
I get done way before they do, and I have remembered the prices pretty good. Every once in a while, I have to ask if anything's gone up because, things have, and there's a lot of things that have not, and a lot of things that have. So I, have to remember those prices. Well, you know how we are when we get older. Our memories is not as good, but I haven't had too much problem. If I have a problem, I'll ask someone, did anything go up this week?
Yeah.
And no, nothing did this week. And, and I try to remember as best as I can. But I do know, since we're getting this old, I know we have a hard time remembering things.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, my most thing...
Well, I even have a hard time remembering things.
I'll tell you, my worst one is, there are so many people I know in Billings, because I've lived here since I was 3 years old. And I'll see them and I recognize them, but I can't remember their name. And that's the worst part. I remember them, but I do not remember their
Well,
names.
it's a good thing you guys have name tags at, right?
Well, yeah,
Mission
we're
Ridge.
supposed to wear name tags at Mission Ridge.
That
but
probably helps a little bit.
it does, but I don't ever wear mine. But because I think everybody knows who I am
Yes.
anyway, because I'm the
Yeah.
only Chinese person there.
Well, let's talk about your history in Montana, because we
Okay.
talked about, I, just recently moved here a little over a year ago. But you've been here since you were 3 years old.
Since I was 3. Okay, my parents came from China. My parents and my 2 older brothers came from China in 1929. And so they went to San Francisco, and from San Francisco they went over to Loveland, Colorado, where brother number 3 was born, back to San Francisco, brother number 4 was born, and I was born. So I'm the only girl and the youngest
one
with 4
girl,
brothers.
okay, 4
Yeah.
brothers, all right.
And so when 3 years old, we all moved up here to Billings.
Yeah.
And
And what did your parents do here in Billings? We talked a little bit
yeah,
about that.
the reason my father came up was to go into the restaurant business with somebody. I don't know if he was a partner or if he came up just to work. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Because he died when I was 4. That was
Okay.
the next year. Back then, the restaurants had
What
their-
year? So what year was this then?
That would be 1938. He died.
Okay, so then your mom is a single mom,
Single mom.
doesn't
with
speak any English,
with 5 children.
with 5 kids in Billings, Montana. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so what happened next?
Okay. Well, since my mother couldn't speak a word of
Yeah.
English, she had no work experience, so she went to wash dishes in one of the Chinese restaurants called the St. Louis Cafe. On Montana Avenue, there were 4 Chinese restaurants, and this restaurant was just on the same block where the one my father was working at.
Yeah.
Okay, and then she was washing dishes there, and my 2 older brothers were kept back in school. They were in junior high when they should have been in senior high, but they couldn't speak English very well, so they held them back. So they both quit school and went to work in the same restaurant where my mother worked,
Yeah.
and started to learn how to cook.
Yeah.
And so eventually, my mother learned how to cook too. And the people next door
Was
were-
it Chinese food that they
Yeah.
were cooking? Okay.
Yeah, it was a Chinese restaurant, St.
Okay.
Louis Cafe.
Okay.
It was a Chinese restaurant. Yeah, there was 4 of them on Montana
Well, the
Avenue.
Chinese has
within
a-
3 blocks.
Yeah, and there's a great history with the Chinese here.
Yes.
The railroad, all of the history there
yes.
as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And so then your mom and your brothers bought a Chinese restaurant
Well,
too?
later.
Later,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I was over 10. I had to be somewhere around 12 or 13, I think. And they bought this little Mexican mom and pop place on South 27th Street, and they changed it to a Chinese American place and called it the New Moon Cafe.
New Moon Cafe. Okay.
And they had it up until 1970 something. The 2 brothers, my 2 older brothers, and my mother, and my brother number 3. The 3 brothers and the 4th brother worked for Elliot's grocery store, and the 3 brothers worked in the restaurant with my mother and myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Very-
then they eventually sold it to a Chinese man, and because my mom was getting too old to be working anymore.
Yeah.
And she was walking up there several blocks. We lived about 3 blocks from
So
that
did you
restaurant.
work in the restaurant too when you were
I
young?
did
Of course.
when I was
Yeah.
younger. Uh-huh.
And then we talked a little bit about your career here in Billings too. You
Oh,
worked at a
right.
couple of different places, and some are still here, right?
Yes. And then I got married,
Yeah.
had 2 kids, and then my husband got sick, and I had to go find a job.
Yeah.
Because, and so the very first job I got was with A&I Distributors, which is still here in Billings. It was-
And is your neighbor now the owner's your neighbor at Mission Ridge?
Don Stanaway. Yeah, he's also living at Mission Ridge where I live. But right now during the winter they go I think to Portland and California, and then they'll probably be back sometime this next month.
Yeah.
And so he lives there at Mission Ridge where I do. He's a
And you worked there for how long?
Well, I'll tell you, I was only getting $1.05 an hour.
Wow.
So I had to go and see if I could find a job.
Minimum wage has gone up
Yeah.
since then.
A little bit, right. And the next job I got was only 10 cents an hour more.
Wow.
But there was 4 of us I had to,
Yeah.
you know.
Take
And
care
so
of.
I went to work for Cummins Diesel.
Okay. Yep.
And I've worked for Cummins Diesel. Then I just kept trying to find a better paying job
Yeah.
because I had
And all
4
your
people.
kids grew up here in Billings?
All my kids grew up
So
here.
it's interesting, we were talking about coming to this building is, the Lincoln Center.
Yes.
And you actually went to school here
I
as a
went to school here
child.
when it was Lincoln, yes.
Yeah.
I started down on the south side with the Taft School.
Okay.
The Taft School was on South 26th Street also, just down about on the 600 or 700 block. We lived on the 100 block on South 26th, and then when I was about 14, we moved down to the 300 block on South 26th. So my whole family, or my family, members of my family have lived on South 26th Street
Wow.
for 47 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
Okay, and then from Taft School, I went up to Garfield.
Did you, when you were younger, going back to the volunteer side of things, as you had a long career here in Billings, and we talked a little bit, how did you start getting into volunteering
Okay, when I retired.
when you retired?
Right.
And where were you at when you retired?
When I retired, I was working at Cisco.
Okay, the foods.
The food,
Okay,
Cisco
yeah.
Foods, right. And I always wanted to work at Alberta Bear because I was into music. I loved music.
Yeah.
When we had the little restaurant, there was a jukebox, and people would come in and play music on the jukebox, but most of it was country western.
Yeah.
And I sang. I learned to sing from that.
Nice.
And when I went to high school, I took music as one of my subjects.
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah. I started volunteering. First, I went on a mission for the church, for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then when I came back from that, then I went down to Alberta Bear.
Yep.
And I volunteered since then, and I still am. I have donated or volunteered over 11,000 hours to
Wow.
Alberta Bear, and I'm still doing scrapbook work for them at home.
Wow.
So, but my favorite job down there at Alberta Bear was being the concession manager.
Yeah.
I got to buy the candies, and I got to
Kind of
set
like
up
what
and-
you're doing at St. John's, really.
Well,
right?
in a way, yeah, it is, isn't it?
Very
I didn't have
similar.
to price it though, but
Yeah, it's very
okay.
similar.
And then also besides working there, I mean that was my first job.
Yeah.
And the first few months or so, couple of months, they were going to move from North 29th Street to their main office to
Yeah.
where it is now,
Now.
which is on 28th, in the
Yep.
corner of 28th and 3rd Avenue. Anyway, and they were on 29th Street in this the security used to be the Security Bank. But anyway, so I was working. I was almost putting in 40 hours a week
volunteering.
because I was helping them get things ready to move. Yeah.
That and so that was kind of your really
That was
like
how I
your
started.
you really didn't retire. You retired and became a full-time volunteer.
Yeah. Then I went into the theater. I sold tickets, and then
You've seen lots of great shows. or little-
I did, but I didn't. That wasn't my main purpose. Was to go see the
Yeah.
shows, but I think it was the music. I think
Yeah.
because you could hear the music.
Do you remember any like great performers
Oh,
there?
golly, I can't. It's
How
been
many
long.
years? How many years have you been volunteering there then?
Well, okay, 65, 88. That's 30. That's 20. What?
Wow, over 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, like I say, I still am. So and then I've also volunteered for the women's run for over 10 years.
The women's run.
Yep, the women's run.
Yeah, that's
I've
coming
al-
up on Mother's Day.
I know.
So did you run in the women's run?
I did. I ran in the women's run, but I also volunteered giving out T-shirts.
Awesome. Yep.
Yep.
I participated for the first time last year. I got here just in time.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I'm
And
looking
I
forward
ran
to
several
it.
years, and I got, they gave prizes or awards the first 5
Yeah.
in each age category,
Yeah.
and I got 5th place 2 or 3 times,
Nice.
and in my age group.
Well, I was very shocked to see the ages of the women that were running.
Yeah.
there was women that were older. I want to say there was one woman that passed me, and she was close to 90s.
Yes.
And I could
There
not
are
believe
some.
there was some great, amazing, strong women in
Right.
Montana. So I'm
Right.
looking forward to doing that too again.
I can't do I can't anymore because of all the
Yeah.
health issues. Yeah, and then I also volunteered for the AARP tax aid, and I was
How did you find the different volunteer opportunities that you were doing?
through the Senior Citizens, the Adult Resource Center.
Okay.
And I volunteer for them. I go down once a month to the community center to do the SMP message.
Yep.
And I have been
And they're a great partner with St. John's Adult
Yeah.
Resource Center. So
that's
that's a great place to find out about volunteer opportunities for
right,
people that
for
are
the
retired.
Adult Resource Center. Yes, there's
Okay.
a lot of opportunities. Yes, and I was an election judge.
And during what election was that? For here recently?
Every year.
Oh, wow.
Every year.
Okay.
Because every year. I was for several years down there, and we would, when the votes came in,
Yeah.
we had to open them and sort them and then run them through.
It seems like you have like a ton of energy. Like and I'm just thinking at 88 years young, well now you've been volunteering for over 20 something years now,
Yeah.
right? And you really never retired, I
No,
guess you could
haven't
say.
really. I haven't really. So
Where do you get all your energy from?
Well, I don't know. I never have been able to sit still, I guess. I don't know. I've just been going. Because
Yeah.
when I was little, I was going.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, when I was, 5 or 6, I was helping my mother at the restaurant,
Yeah.
peeling potatoes and taking garbage out in the restaurant where she worked. So,
Yeah.
and today I'm the choir director in my church, in my
Yeah.
ward.
So that keeps you busy too.
Yes, and we practice once a week, and I have to find appropriate music to sing.
Yeah.
And we practice once a week, and then we'll sing for our sacrament meeting about once a month or so forth. And
How did you, when you did find the volunteer opportunities, even at St. John's, how did you decide which ones you wanted to do? And it sounds like there are things that you kind of liked, because even
Better
the
than
store,
others. Yeah.
even like working at Alberta Bear in the concession stand and then working at the country store is very similar. So it sounds like
Yeah.
you matched kind of like what you wanted to do.
Well, that
with
was
the
an
opportunity.
easy thing for me to do.
Yeah.
The country store at Mission Ridge, because I could sit there and they would bring the groceries in. I didn't have to go out and get them.
Yeah.
Because they got them all from Walmart, and either Walmart would deliver them, and the girls in the office would bring them in carts and put them take them out of the bags and put them on the thing. And I'm sitting there pricing them, giving them to these other ladies to put away. So that was an easy job, and it wasn't so much because it was groceries. If there was anything else that I could do that by just sitting, because since I can't do so much walking,
Right.
if I could sit and do it and use my hands, that's fine.
You're making a scrapbook for Alberta Bear.
Yes,
So
and
what is
right.
that kind of scrapbook is that?
Okay, it's an annual scrapbook. Is from their season is from July 1st to the end of June. Okay, so the end of their fiscal year will be end of June. So I have to look through all the papers, and whenever there's an article about Alberta Bear, regardless what it is, I cut it out, and then I put them together by months and date them.
Yep.
So
There's like a historical documentation of all their performances or the news about Alberta Bear.
And then I put a logo, their logo. I have them print the logo on an 8.5 by 11 that'll fit in the slot there with the year. Like this one will be 2022-23.
Yeah.
And so, I've got everything in there now except for now until June. So there hasn't been anything else except for maybe 3 articles.
Yeah.
I try to do them bunches at a time, because there's no point in me just sitting down and cutting articles out of 3 papers.
How do you keep up with all these different volunteer jobs? It seems like you're working full-time volunteering. Like, do you have a calendar that you use?
Well, no, but I know that the groceries come in every Thursday at Mission Ridge. It's every Thursday morning between 9 and 10. So I know that. And so, I just remember it. Either that or put it on my calendar. And the scrapbook thing I just do whenever I have enough to put in a book.
And so if you were going to give some words of wisdom to people that were interested in volunteering in the community at St. John's, what would you share with them?
Well, I would say, if you're really interested in volunteering and you want to find something that might fit you, I would go down to the Adult Resource Center, especially if you're over 65, if you're a senior like myself, because they have all kinds of jobs, and then some of them I can't do, They have jobs, delivering meals.
Right.
To the handicapped.
Like the Meals and Wheels.
Right, Meals on Wheels. They have, let's see, I'm trying to remember.
Well,
some
they have
of
a
the
whole
things.
list of books I'm sure you could look at.
They have, and
so
they
that's
come out
one
with
way.
a monthly magazine too. Yeah.
And how did you, so let's go back to the segment of the show is What's Your St. John's Story?
About which?
What's Your St. John's Story? So
How did I move over this?
Yeah, so how did you learn about St. John? How did we get blessed with you coming to St. John's?
Come to St. John's and being in,
Yeah.
I lived by myself over on Wembley Place. In 1998, I moved there from Lockwood after my husband passed away and after my son, well, actually, he was already in college, and I stayed out there a little longer, and then finally decided that, well, I've got to move back into town, because we only lived out there like about 15 or 16 years, because my husband died when we were out there in 1984. So my son was through school, and he was going to college, and I told myself, I'm going to try to sell this house and move into town. And so I moved into a little apartment for about, less than a year, and then I found this condo out on Wembley Place off of 32nd Street, right across from Albertsons. And so I've been living there since 98. And then, now it's almost 20 years later, and I'm getting to the point that I've had several surgeries.
Yeah.
And
needed
it's
more
hard
care.
for me to vacuum and all this stuff. And so the kids agreed with me that I thought I'd better move into a retirement home.
Yeah.
And that's how I got acquainted with, and I looked all around.
Yeah.
And I went back to Mission Ridge several times, and I really liked it because they had all these things, They've got a swimming pool, they got a gym, they got all these activities.
Well, someone like you who's very active and likes to keep busy, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's how I got acquainted. And finally, when I did go, I went to visit with Lisa, who is still there, but she's
Sorensen,
Lisa Sorensen. And we discussed it, and she said, "Yeah, I think you can handle this."
Yeah.
And so I only got a 1-bedroom, but my gosh, I have one whole side full of music because of my choir director job at the church. But eventually, I'll have to give that up, and when I do, I'll give all the music to whoever's come next, and that'll get rid of all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. You have such a rich history in Billings, and we're so grateful to have you at St. John's. There are so many different ways to volunteer at St. John's, and I didn't even know that this opportunity was available. So just, and how it matches to your history. I think there's something to be said about when people are looking to volunteer, that it is something either that they really like or enjoy doing, or maybe they want to try something new. So I would say, go ahead.
There's something else I want to just give you a little hint of what else I do at Mission Ridge.
Yeah.
Every Chinese New Year, I brought this up and wanted to know if I could set up all my Chinese things and give a little spiel about Chinese New Year.
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
And so they said yes, and that's how we started. And then we made little samples and gave them little samples. Now the last few years, they've
COVID.
been. We're not. I haven't actually given the little talk about it.
Yeah.
But I have set up a lot of things in there in the dining room area.
Yeah.
And the chefs have been kind enough to cook up Chinese food for us on Chinese New Year. So
I think, that's awesome. Well, I think we were destined to meet because we are working on creating some more diverse and cultural events at St. John's, and to share those with the residents, but also with the community. So we definitely need to work on putting together some Chinese New Year stuff in the future. I think that would be
yeah,
great.
Yeah, I've been pushing it since I've been there. So I moved in there in November of 17. So I didn't do it I don't think I did it the first year, but after that.
Yeah.
So I've done it, several times now. But the last two is when they actually cooked for the dinner.
Yeah, the Chinese
food and everybody. The very first year they did it, everybody that went in there went back and got seconds.
Wow.
So they could take it back to their room.
Yeah, well, that's only one example, but we're going to be doing some great things with the residents. We have Cinco de Mayo coming up, and I'm going to be sharing the history of Cinco de Mayo with the residents. We have Montana's own Mexican mariachis. They're actually from Montana, authentic mariachis. They're going to come to St. John's, and then I think we're going to do a Mexican Independence Day festival in September. So there'll be lots of great things to be engaged with and to volunteer for. I think those are also going to be opportunities for the residents to volunteer as well. So thank you again for being here, Ying. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for asking me. I didn't know what to expect. It was not as scary as I thought, since I'm just talking to you.
No, it was a piece of cake. So, and thank you to our community for being here and supporting. We have volunteer appreciation every April, and we celebrate volunteers like Ying. This year, our event is on April 20th, where Ying will get an award along with other volunteers who work and volunteer at different areas all over St. John's. So there's lots of opportunities. If you're interested in volunteering, you can go and speak to Carissa Welsh or Elisa Carruthers. Elisa actually heads up the volunteer department, and she'd be happy to hear from you. So thank you for joining us again. Thank you, Ying, for being here, for sharing What's Your St. John's Story.